In Ethiopia, celebrities and artists rise up to protect children from sex offenders. As numbers of child abuse cases rise during the coronavirus outbreak, those with voices call for tougher sentences.
Creating more farmland in Borno State with impending food shortages and many farmers displaced, the Nigerian government makes 2,000 hectares of land available for cultivation. Hello and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Uso at Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington. Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori, happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Now, due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, the Voice of America has reduced staffing at VOA headquarters in Washington. So, as you see, our broadcast looks a little different for now. We appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Uso in Lagos brings you that story. Cultivation spaces are opening up in Borno State as the state government has made 2,000 hectares of land available for farming.
Over 2 million people have been affected by the Boko Haram insurgency in Borno State. Many of them are farmers who no longer have access to their farms because of the ongoing counter-insurgency war. The affected population has been surviving on humanitarian aid and government support for many years. But the government believes this is unsustainable, even as the number of malnourished children continue to rise.
This year, we opened up about 2,000 hectares of rice farm along Mapa, Dikwa, Ngala, Gajibo, and Gala. We are all doing this because of the food security. His Excellency always talking that we can't allow our people to stay on hunger. We are spending millions of naira to buy food.
Internally displaced persons are now the beneficiaries of government-funded farms under the protection of agro rangers.
Kowane rana ana ba mu 700 haka. Bakin gari haka muka zo nan muka yi dan tashin biya muka dan samu guzuri. Kwana biyu anan sai mu je mina mu kwana daya haka. Kai kasa din ya canja sosai, yayi karfi. Yayi karfi sosai, ya zama kaman sabon waje ma haka yanzu.
The agro rangers are providing security for farmers in many locations across the state. Their presence is a confidence booster for the farmers who've been restricted to small farms around the capital city.
Recently, just 2 months ago, we've extended into Mafa, local government area. You can now see we're also in Biu, local government area. We have also extended up to Dikwa, local government area. So as we get more logistic support, we expand our operations.
Every day we come, the security will come and they work out with our place. Everybody they happy, everybody they laugh. Before you go reach the time, nobody go fear for the bush. If the security know they are around, nobody come and hear.
The federal government, through the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, recently kicked off an air supply program of food items for the affected population. This capital-intensive program will no longer be necessary if the Borno State government achieves its goal of returning internally displaced people to their hometowns and boosting food supply.
Let's get more on this story from agricultural consultant, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you for having me.
What do you make of Borno State government's plan to make 2,000 hectares available for farmers?
It's a welcome development. It means that the government is taking responsibility and they'll be doing away with aid and will be able to feed themselves, generate revenue, and ensure food security. It's actually a roadmap that other governors should embrace. Well, here we see that regarding the issue of security, that the state government says they're going to partner with the NCDC, agro rangers to safeguard farmers and farmlands. How impactful can this be? It's actually going to work because the farmers want confidence. And once they have the rangers, security operatives around them, many of them will gradually begin to go back to farm, which will also have a ripple effect across the northeast zone. But do we see, has this problem even been addressed? How much concern, how much attention have we given to that security question? I think we've not really addressed the security concern, because what that means is like maybe a percentage of 1% of all the farmers will be operating where there's protection, while the majority in other northeastern states will still be having that fear of returning to the farms.
So, but for you, all of this notwithstanding, what is the key thing that you think we should pay a lot more attention to?
Well, we should pay attention to the river basins. They are in all the northeastern, across the country, and the challenge is they all will produce onions. It will be too much, it will waste. Tomatoes, it will waste. So we need to get their attention to other things that they can do, like rice, that government is promoting, you know, apart from them just investing again and losing in February, March. And that's what happens, and that's what's been happening for the last 15 years. I need to see that change. If there's no change, the farmers will be broke again by April.
What about the funding components? I know time and again, people look, investors equally look to farming and see, is this something for us? Can we go in there? First, what should they consider, and who should be looking to get into farming?
Well, I think the rural community should be left to do the farming, just improving the equipments they give them such that it's no longer manual. In the north, it's mostly manual beyond the tractor. So we need to have the handy equipment that can do what they do manually now. So the rural farmers should continue to produce, while others should plan into the value addition. If you try to mix it up, it won't work.
Well, at the moment, you see that the IFPRI, they're talking about drought, and then in some other areas, erosion in parts of the country. What are we doing about this?
I'm not hearing anything from the right quarters. I have great concerns for 2021. The way Nigeria experienced Southwest, about 2 months of no rain this year, that's the way it started in California, because I did a study in California. You know, that was how it started, and for 5 years, they didn't have food. Channels reported some time ago when the water on the bridge, when it dried off. It happened in California. It followed the drought. That trend is happening in Nigeria now. So 2021, we should expect, if it follows that trend, that there may be very high level of food shortage.
So how would you analyze what the government has done so far to ensure food security in the country generally?
Well, I think the government has actually done more than previous administrations in terms of funding, in terms of giving publicity, in terms of resources, not only money, getting to the farmers. However, it needs to be evaluated vis-a-vis the coming potential challenge of climate change. So if they don't plan, if they don't announce the River Basin project for 2020-2021, 2021 may be a very challenging year for the country.
Finally, the challenges that COVID-19 posed globally, we also felt the impact here. Concerning food security, are we out of the woods?
We're not. We're not. In fact, we should be more concerned, because we have security and we don't have enough food. We don't have seeds. Price of dollar has gone high, and at least about 90% of what any farmer uses is imported. So the price of dollar is not making it, you know, really look good.
I guess more food for thought right there. Well, thank you for talking to us today, African Farmer Mogaji.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Zimbabwean doctors and nurses are challenging the Ministry of Health's move that adds hurdles to their ability to seek work abroad. The ministry in September added official signatures before medical workers could get a certificate of good standing. It needed reference for getting work abroad. Now, Zimbabwe's Hospital Doctors Association says the added bureaucracy is an attempt to prevent a mass exodus over poor treatment during the COVID-19 pandemic. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
After more than 10 years of working in government hospitals, this 36-year-old doctor who did not want to be named says countless protests have not resulted in a decent salary or better working conditions. He applied to work in England. But for nearly 3 months now, he says he can't go because he's still waiting for a certificate of good standing from the government that foreign employers require.
I want to leave this country to work where I can treat people properly with all equipment and medicines. Also, I want a salary that can look after my children and my parents who paid for my education fees, and to fulfill my dreams, being a doctor.
The Senior Hospital Doctors Association of Zimbabwe says its members are frustrated by delays they attribute to the government trying to curtail a brain drain among health workers. Its leader says the government is misusing the certificate of good standing.
It will now cease to be about that. The moment we allow it to be made use of by the government in this manner, it can be abused as a way of handling labor issues rather than being a professional issue.
Dr. Msara added in some cases doctors just want to go abroad for further education and return to Zimbabwe. Health personnel in Zimbabwe have long protested about poor working conditions, including inadequate personal protective equipment, PPEs, during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the cash-strapped nation has been unable to improve salaries or provide needed supplies. Zimbabwe's Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, who is the country's new health minister, told doctors this week that he would address all their problems.
Your work will not go unnoticed. Do your best, and I will do my part. And together, we can avoid the ongoing and unnecessary loss of life.
He did not talk about preventing healthcare workers from leaving Zimbabwe. Health officials said they would not comment on the issue after Chiwenga's promise of solving the doctors' problems. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
The United Nations has raised nearly $1.7 billion in pledges to scale up aid to millions of people in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. This comes amid warnings of a looming huge humanitarian crisis.
The United Nations raised more than $1.7 billion in pledges to fund aid efforts in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger for the rest of 2020 and 2021, as UN Aid Chief Mark Lowcock warned a preventable tragedy is looming in the Central Sahel region. Lowcock told a virtual pledging conference that some 13 million people, including 5 million children, need emergency humanitarian assistance to survive. At the Gao Hospital, children suffering from malnutrition continue to receive treatment.
I brought my son to Gao Hospital because he was seriously ill. He even passed out. I thought he was going to die.
The pledges from 22 countries, the EU, and the Education Cannot Wait Fund fell short of the $2.4 billion the United Nations said it needed. More than 13 million people in the region need humanitarian assistance. Some 1.5 million people are internally displaced. Lockdowns and other COVID-19 restriction measures have pushed an additional 6 million people into extreme poverty. Over 300 Fulani families are now sheltering at an informal site about 8 kilometers from Gao after having fled their homes in Tessit.
A total of 5 people in my family have been killed during this conflict, including my brother's son.
In Gao, other families now live at a cultural center under very difficult circumstances. Lowcock cited chronic poverty and underdevelopment, demographic growth and climate change, intercommunal conflict, violent criminal gangs and extremists as some of the causes of the humanitarian crisis. The fund will help some 10 million people for the remainder of this year and through 2021 with nutrition and food, health services, water and sanitation, shelter, education, protection and support to survivors of gender-based violence.
It's time now for a short break. We'd like to remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, bringing visitors back to the pyramids to boost tourism after coronavirus shutdown. Egypt is developing the Giza Plateau.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Ethiopian celebrities and influential artists have started a movement calling for tougher sentences for sex offenders following a rise in child abuse since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. David Doyle reports.
At a hospital in Addis Ababa, Ainalem Bekele caresses her daughter's hand as the 14-year-old recovers from being sexually abused by a relative. Activists say assaults like this have spiked since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic and the closure of schools.
She was raped. She has never even had a headache since she was born. She's never been to a hospital up until this age. But because of the rape, my daughter was paralysed and she can't even stand up. Now she's improving a bit.
Bekele, a casual worker, has given up her day job to sit at her daughter's side. But elsewhere in Ethiopia's capital, activists are hard at work. Actress Megdas Tsige is the face of a new social movement started by a group of celebrities and influential artists called Zim Alalim. The name means, I will not be silenced.
We came out with the slogan, Zim Alalim, after hearing the news that 101 children have been abused while staying at home due to the coronavirus.
Zim Alalim has collected more than 50,000 signatures for a petition calling for stricter punishments for rape and sexual abuse. Officials confirm that recorded cases of sexual violence have risen. And lawyers say there are also gaps in the way sexual assault and rape cases are investigated. Senayit Tasu volunteers at the Ethiopian Women Lawyers Association.
The police or the prosecutor do not have a set of codified rules in how to investigate, on how to collect evidence, what kind of evidence do we call relevant, what kind of evidence do we call admissible.
For its part, the Ministry of Women, Children and Youth says it recognises the problems and is working on initiatives to curb sexual violence and bring offenders to justice. They include a national sex offender registration system and a dedicated police force. But a spokesman also said they're hoping that cases will reduce when schools reopen.
Egypt is developing its historical pyramids plateau to attract more tourists as it continues to boost its revenue after a hiatus caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
A first-ever restaurant and a set of eco-friendly electric buses are the latest developments to Egypt's Giza Pyramids Plateau. The $19 million project is part of a greater plan to develop tourist-friendly amenities and services at the ancient site. Naguib Sawiris is the business tycoon whose company is the main developer.
Finally made a tourist happy, because you all are aware of the nasty stories with the camel people, the donkeys and the alien. The horses.
Dubbed the Nine Pyramids Lounge, the new restaurant is 1,341 square meters large and overlooks the Pyramids complex. The Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Khalid El Anani, says the new project also includes the deployment of 30 environment-friendly electronic buses equipped with screens that act as tour guides.
Guests will leave their cars outside, and tourist buses will leave their vehicles outside a large parking space. Guests will come and find a large set of ticket windows where they can pay electronically or by cash. For those who cannot pay electronically, temporarily, they will ride electric buses.
New regulations will also be imposed on vendors and workers offering camel and horse rides. Vendors will not be allowed to directly deal with tourists regarding payments. Instead, tourists will present electronic tickets to licensed workers.
We will organize the salespeople. We will not deprive them of their income, but we will put them into suitable, nice places. We will try as much as possible to avoid any financial interaction between the horses or the camels and the tourists. The tourist will have his electronic ticket.
The changes are part of a larger project to develop the tourist destination, which were in the works before the industry took a hit with the coronavirus pandemic. Tourism accounts for up to 15% of Egypt's national output, and officials have said previously that it was losing around $1 billion each month after the sector shut down most of its activities in March.
Andy Costa is one of a new generation of activists whose mission to promote health and the environment through cycling has been given a boost amid the coronavirus pandemic and the need to avoid public transport. Tom Scally reports.
Africa's traffic-clogged streets make it the deadliest continent in the world for pedestrians and cyclists, according to the World Health Organization. But a new generation of cycling activists like Andy Costa from Ivory Coast thinks the momentum is now with them.
The bicycle is the transport of the future.
Lockdown restrictions and the need to avoid public transport have focused attention on cycling. But for Costa, it was wider health concerns that propelled him into action.
When I used to go to school, we just had one kid who was asthmatic in my class. Today in our children's classes, 50% are ill with asthma. So it really demonstrates the negative impact the environment has on the health of our children. Our environment is really polluted.
Last month, after 10 years of campaigning, authorities told Costa he could help plan bike lanes in part of the commercial capital, Abidjan. Jacques-Gabriel Ehou, mayor of the Plateau Central Business District, said the lanes were part of the solution to make roads more fluid and improve health. But Costa is not stopping at that victory. He says his aim is to change the perception that cycling is for the rural poor. And his organisation, My Dream for Africa, make videos with celebrities such as soccer star Didier Drogba. He started with Ivory Coast, he says, but the vision is to make the whole continent more cyclable.
And that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain Uso. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.